All right, so this week I'm going to talk about some movies that all have a fat character in them, all played by an actual fat actor. These ones are all kind of fat slobs, so I'm kind of dressed for it today. Um, so let's get into it. Growing up, these are all movies. Two of them were from the 90s and one's from the 2000s. And they all have fat people in them, and basically that's why I own them. Um, but on their own, they're pretty good movies as they are. So, first one I'm going to talk about is. Let's talk about this one first because it's the earliest. National Lampoon Senior Trip. This is a hit and miss comedy. There are parts in it that are funny and the parts that aren't. It's just basically a high school trip to Washington, D.C. to meet some senators and stuff like that, but they're all like stoners and drunk teenagers because it's the 90s and so yeah, the fat character in this, I rented this so many times as a kid on VHS. There's a fat character in it who's probably about 350 pounds. And the whole time, the whole movie, he's eating. He's just a fat idiot. He's eating, and there's one scene where he has a fantasy because the whole trip, he's out to meet, he wants to meet a blonde Japanese girl. That's his whole fetish, and they're like, they don't exist. And then he meets one, and he has this mental fantasy of being a sumo wrestler and jumping on top of her. So in his fantasy, he's just dressed like a sumo wrestler. So he's just got the little thing on. I forget what they're called. And yeah, so you get to see like a 350-pound person in sumo clothes jump on top of someone. Besides that, it's just him eating and being an idiot the whole time. So there's not really a huge amount more than that. But just growing up, this was big because it was like, oh my god, there's an actual fat actor in this movie, not in a fat suit, and and there's a sumo scene. Next one I'm going to talk about is from 2000 or 2001, Evolution. It's got David Duchovny and Julianne Moore. And it also has Ethan Suplee in it, who back in the 90s was like 530 pounds at his heaviest, apparently. And this is him at his heaviest. Like, he's clearly very big in this. He's a minor character in it, but he is in it the whole way through the movie. Like, he pops up in like 10 different little scenes. And he's just a fat slob. He has a brother in the movie who's like, they're both students of the David Duchovny's character. But yeah, Ethan Suplee at his heaviest. He's running around. He has a couple different outfit changes. He's not like showing off his fat, but he's clearly very big. And he's just a random character in there. They didn't have to have a big fat guy, but that's why I like these movies, because it's like some kind of representation for a person my size. So growing up, I always looked at these movies like, wow, there's some inspiration to head towards. And then the last movie I'm going to talk about is 2006, I think. 2006, Idiocracy, Luke Wilson. This one doesn't have a specific fat character in it, but it's about a guy who is put into like a sleep tank thing for an army experiment, and it's only supposed to be for like a month or something like that, and it turns out to be like 500 years, and he wakes up and he's now the smartest person in the human race because everyone else is a big fat idiot. So in this, there's lots of like just side characters you meet for like 2 seconds, or people in the background. A lot of fat people in poorly fitting clothes. So everyone's wearing like polyester in the future, and it's just clinging to everyone. So there's a lot of fat people in it, and they just everything's on display. It's like there's no hiding that they're fat. So that's the three I'm going to talk about. I just looking through the movies here. There's so many movies that have a fat character. So this is part one of the Fat Slobs in movies. There's so many more. But yeah, so that's that. I couldn't imagine being a 530-pound actor, like on a film set, being this weight. Like, holy crap. So I gotta, he's thin now and in shape, Ethan Suplee, but I gotta give him credit for being like 530 pounds and being an actor in a whole bunch of movies. Like, it wasn't like he wasn't working. He was in a lot of different movies. He was in, oh my god, The Negotiator, I believe. He's like a security guard that gets taken hostage. Alright, so I'm just gonna list off Ethan Suplee's career when he was at his fattest. So, 1995, Mallrats. And then he was in Chasing Amy. So I forgot about that. He started off with Kevin Smith collaborations. Then he was in American History X in a dramatic role. And then he was in Dogma, working with Kevin Smith again. Then he was in Road Trip, which is like a stoner comedy. Remember the Titans. He was like a fat football player. Blow with Johnny Depp and Penelope Cruz, I think, or I forget who's in Blow. But he's in Blow. Then he's in Evolution in 2001. John Q is the movie where I forgot he plays a security guard, and he gets there's a hostage, a father who needs a transplant for his son, who takes a whole bunch of people in a hospital for a hostage, so his son can get treatment, and he's the security guard. He's just a big fat guy. But yeah, and Cold Mountain, he was in that with Nicole Kidman. The Butterfly Effect, Art School Confidential, Clerks 2, The Fountain. He was in Unstoppable. He's the guy who lets the train go in Unstoppable. And The Wolf of Wall Street. And I think this is about the time he starts losing weight. But to be in all of those movies in Hollywood, like all of those movies, as a person who's between 400 and over 500 pounds, that is a really awesome career. The fact that he was working like every year he's in a movie or two. So there is a need in Hollywood to have a fat actor. The fat guy in National Lampoon Senior Trip, the first movie I talked about, his name is Eric Edwards. He's also thin now. Everyone loses weight, apparently, in the movie industry. Can't stay fat. I just wish there was like an actor who would like just blow up and get really fat. Like a normal actor and just get really fat. It seems like everyone else is on the reverse trend of that. But yeah, Ethan Suplee and all the fat actors like Chris Farley and then Will Sasso back in the 90s, like, or John Candy. It's just a lot of fat actors, and they were really loved. And I think that that's something that's kind of missing in Hollywood right now, is like really fat actors, people who are like over 300 pounds. You don't really see it much anymore. So I kind of think there needs to be a revival of that, because in the 90s, even in the 80s, there were movies like The Disorderlies. I had the Fat Boys, the rap group, the Fat Boys. the rap group called the Fat Boys. Like the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s were like, it was kind of interesting to see. You had like 600-pound rappers. You had groups of rappers called the Fat Boys. It was just, I don't know. It just seemed like there was more representation then. There is representation now of obese people in Hollywood, but it's all tightly fit within a certain, like, you can't go over 350, 300 pounds because, I don't know. Like, you see actors now with fat faces, but their bodies are kind of just like normal. It's like, oh, they're 300 pounds at most. They have a fat face, so they look fat, but I don't know. I think there should be more fat actors, but I can say right now that at my weight, being an actor would be a huge struggle because you have location shoots, there's a lot of things like creature comforts that a fat person needs. You get tired really quickly in movie sets. They're working, like, you can have a 12-hour day, and a lot of the times you're just sitting and waiting. But, I mean, you're out there for 12 hours. That's a lot for, like, a big fat guy. So, I understand why people would want to lose weight in the industry, but I kind of miss having that really fat actor representation. That's my 2 cents.